Vivian Rose's hands shook as she read the card nestled beside the three-tier chocolate cake. Poison. Your family is next. The package had arrived at Grant King's estate 20 minutes ago. The Mafia Boss was descending the stairs in 2 minutes, and the man who'd threatened her sister's life was watching to confirm she'd placed death on her employer's dinner plate. She had to choose, one life for another. Grant King finished his final security review at exactly 9:47 p.m., his finger sliding across the tablet screen with controlled precision. The surveillance grid showed 12 active feeds across his estate, perimeter cameras, entry points, motion sensors in the wine cellar. All clear, all controlled. 40 years old, and he still monitored every detail personally. Paranoia wasn't a weakness in his world. It was survival. His estate occupied 15 secured acres in upstate New York. Walls reinforced with steel, security systems that cost more than most houses, staff vetted through channels that would make the FBI jealous. The grounds sprawled beyond bulletproof windows, manicured hedges and surveillance posts disguised as garden lights. He was reaching for his bourbon when the kitchen intercom crackled. "Sir," the voice belonged to Chen, head of his night security. "Package just arrived at the service entrance. Delivery marked urgent for you personally. Driver's already gone." Grant checked the security feed. 9:51 p.m. on a Wednesday. "We're not expecting anything." "I know, sir. That's why I'm calling. The courier service isn't one of our approved vendors, but the package, it's addressed to you. Handwritten. Says it's time-sensitive." Time-sensitive. Grant felt something cold settle behind his ribs, though his expression remained neutral. In his world, unexpected packages were never gifts. "Bring it to the kitchen. Don't let anyone touch it. I'm coming down." 3 minutes later, Grant entered the kitchen through the private elevator. Chen stood by the industrial steel counter, a velvet-wrapped box sitting between them like an accusation. But it was the woman standing motionless by the pantry that stopped Grant cold. Vivian Rose, his housekeeper, maybe 26, 27 at most. Auburn hair pulled back in a neat bun, pale skin that looked even paler under the kitchen's harsh lighting, hazel eyes that wouldn't meet his. She wore her standard uniform black dress, white apron, but her hands were pressed flat against her thighs like she was trying to stop them from shaking. "Vivian." Grant's voice was quiet, controlled. "You're working late." "I was. Polishing the silverware in the dining room, Mr. King." Her voice was steady, but the micro-tremor in her jaw betrayed her. "I heard Chen come through with the package. Did you see who delivered it?" "No, sir. I was in the dining room." Grant studied her. Vivian Rose had worked in his household for 8 months. Invisible, efficient, never late, never intrusive. The kind of employee who understood that discretion was more valuable than conversation. But right now, she looked like she was standing at the edge of a cliff. "Open it," Grant said, gesturing to Chen. Chen carefully unwrapped the velvet covering, revealing an elegant white bakery box tied with silver ribbon. He lifted the lid. Inside sat a 3-tier chocolate cake, professionally decorated with dark chocolate ganache and fresh raspberries. Beautiful, perfect, completely out of place. A small cream envelope was tucked beside the cake, Grant's name written in elegant script. Grant reached for it, but Vivian's sharp inhale stopped him. He looked up. Her eyes were locked on the envelope, her face drained of all color, and her right hand had moved unconsciously to grip the edge of the counter. "Vivian," Grant said slowly, his voice dropping to that lethal quiet that made grown men confess. "Do you know what this is?" "No, Mr. King," but her voice cracked on the lie. Grant picked up the envelope with deliberate care and opened it. Inside was a single card, the message printed in block letters. "Poison. Your family is next." The temperature in the kitchen dropped 10 degrees. Grant's eyes moved from the card to the cake, then to Vivian, who had taken an unconscious step backward, her hand now pressed against her mouth. "Chen," Grant said without looking away from Vivian. "Lock down the estate. No one in, no one out. Then get Marcus and run a full security sweep." "Yes, sir." Chen moved immediately toward the door. The moment it closed, Grant set the card down and turned his full attention to Vivian Rose. "You knew," he said. "It wasn't a question." Vivian was shaking now, her carefully maintained composure shattering like glass. "Mr. King, You knew about this package. You knew what was in it." Grant took a single step forward, and Vivian backed into the pantry doorway. "How long have you known?" I wasn't supposed to." Her voice broke completely. Grant's mind was already 3 steps ahead, calculating trajectories, identifying vulnerabilities. Someone had gotten to his housekeeper. Someone had used her to deliver a weapon directly into his home. Someone had turned his most trusted, invisible employee into a threat. Who sent it? Grant's voice was soft, controlled, absolutely lethal. And what did they threaten you with to make you bring poison into my house? Vivian's legs gave out. She slid down the door frame, her back against the pantry wall, her hands covering her face. And Grant King, who'd built an empire on reading people's fear, realized with sudden, cold clarity that Vivian Rose wasn't afraid of him. She was terrified for him. Talk, Grant said, crouching down to her eye level. Or I call the police, and you explain to them why you're an accessory to attempted murder. Vivian looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, and whispered the words that would change everything. They have my sister. Grant King didn't move for 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, his mind processed everything. The timeline, the threat, the vulnerability he'd missed for 8 months, and the cold realization that someone had gotten close enough to his world to weaponize his own employee. Your sister, he repeated, his voice flat. Vivian nodded, her breath coming in short gasps. Esther. She's 19. She has a medical condition she needs. Constant care, medication, monitoring. I've been paying for everything since our parents died 3 years ago. Grant stood slowly, his movements controlled despite the fury building in his chest. Not fury at Vivian, fury at whoever had been smart enough, ruthless enough, to identify his housekeeper's pressure point and exploit it. Keep talking. Vivian wiped her face with shaking hands. 2 weeks ago, a man approached me at the pharmacy where I pick up Esther's prescriptions. He knew her name, knew her condition, knew exactly how much her care costs monthly. Her voice cracked. He said if I didn't do exactly what he told me, Esther would disappear, that I'd never find her body. What did he want? He said I'd receive a package tonight, that I was supposed to place the cake on your plate at 10 p.m., that if I didn't... She looked up at Grant, her hazel eyes hollow. He said my family was next. Grant's jaw tightened. You hid the cake instead. I couldn't. Vivian's voice broke. I couldn't do it. I swear I was going to just serve it and pretend I didn't know. But when Chen brought it in, and I saw the envelope, I couldn't. So you were planning to kill me? Grant's voice was dangerously quiet. Right up until the moment you lost your nerve. No. Vivian scrambled to her feet, pressing her back against the pantry wall. I was never going to let you eat it. I was going to hide it, destroy it. Something I just needed time to figure out how to save Esther without getting caught. Grant finished coldly. Without anyone dying. Vivian's voice rose. Desperation, overwhelming fear. You or her. I couldn't let either of you die because of me. Grant studied her. 8 months of perfect, invisible service. 8 months of showing up early, leaving late, never asking questions, never making mistakes. 8 months of being exactly the kind of employee he valued most. Loyal, efficient, and utterly trustworthy. Or so he'd thought. Who was the man? I don't know his name. He never told me. He was tall, maybe 40, dark hair, expensive suit. He had an accent Southern, maybe Georgia or Alabama. He gave me a phone number to confirm when the job was done. Grant pulled out his phone and texted Marcus. Get to the kitchen. Bring surveillance equipment. We have a confession. Describe him in more detail. Everything you remember. Height, weight, distinguishing features, anything he said that was specific. Vivian's hands were still shaking, but her voice steadied as she focused on the details. 6'2", maybe 6'3", around 190 pounds. Dark brown hair, no gray. He wore a gray suit, expensive fabric, tailored. Wedding ring on his left hand, gold, thick band. Small scar above his right eyebrow, maybe half an inch. He smelled like cigar smoke, even though he wasn't smoking. Grant's mind filed every detail. What did he say exactly, word for word? He said, Vivian Rose, you're going to help me with a very simple task. On Wednesday, November 15th, you will receive a package at Grant King's estate. You will place the contents on his dinner plate at exactly 10 p.m. If you do this, your sister remains safe. If you don't, your family is next. Do you understand? November 15th, tonight. And you believed him? Vivian's face crumpled. He showed me photos of Esther at the care facility, in her room, sleeping. He knew which window was hers, knew her nurse's schedule, knew when I visited. She wrapped her arms around herself. He knew everything, Mr. King. Everything. The kitchen door opened. Marcus entered, carrying a compact recording device and a tablet. He took one look at Vivian's tear-stained face and Grant's rigid posture and immediately understood the situation had escalated beyond a mysterious package. Marcus, Grant said without looking away from Vivian. I need surveillance pulled from the pharmacy on Amsterdam and 84th Street. 2 weeks ago, approximately. He looked at Vivian. What time? Around 3 p.m., Thursday, November 2nd. Thursday, November 2nd, 3 p.m., Grant repeated. White woman, late 20s, auburn hair. Look for any male approaching her, fitting the description I'm about to give you. Marcus nodded, already typing notes into his tablet. Grant rattled off the physical description Vivian had provided, then added, also, get Chen to call Street Catherine's care facility in. He looked at Vivian. Where is she? Yonkers. Street Catherine's medical complex. Street Catherine's in Yonkers. I want a security team there within 20 minutes. Discreet. No one approaches Esther Rose without clearance. If anyone tries, detain them and call me immediately. On it. Marcus moved toward the door, phone already to his ear. And Marcus, Grant's voice stopped him. Pull all surveillance from this estate for the last 2 weeks. Every camera, every entry log, every delivery record, someone's been watching us, and I want to know how long they've been inside my security. After Marcus left, Grant turned back to Vivian. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by fear and confession, but her eyes held his, waiting for judgment. You understand what you've done, Grant said quietly. Yes, sir. You brought a weapon into my home. You planned to serve me poison. You compromised 8 months of loyal service because someone threatened your sister. Yes, sir. Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. You also, Grant continued, made the choice to protect me at the potential cost of your sister's life. You defied a direct threat. You chose my life over hers. Vivian closed her eyes. I couldn't do it. I thought I could, but when it came down to it, I couldn't kill someone, even to save her. Grant was quiet for a long moment, studying the woman in front of him. Vivian Rose, who polished silverware he never used and cleaned rooms he rarely entered. Vivian Rose, who'd been invisible for 8 months and was now the most visible threat and the most vulnerable victim in his entire operation. Your sister is being secured as we speak, Grant said finally. No one will touch her. That's not your problem anymore. Vivian's eyes snapped open. What? Your problem, Grant continued, his voice taking on that lethal quiet that meant absolute control. Is that someone used you to get to me. That means you're not just a witness. You're a target, and until I find out who sent that cake and why, you don't leave this estate. Mr. King, I can't. You can, and you will. Grant pulled out his phone and sent another text. You're under protective custody as of right now, not as a prisoner, Vivian, as someone who needs protection from whoever is threatening your family. I don't understand. Grant's eyes were cold, calculating, absolutely certain. The man who approached you? He's not working alone. This wasn't about killing me, it was about proving he could get close enough to try. Which means he'll come back. And next time, he won't use subtle coercion. He'll use force. Vivian's face went even paler. Esther is being moved to a secure location within the hour. You'll see her tomorrow, under guard. But until I eliminate this threat completely, neither of you goes anywhere without my permission. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. Do you understand what I'm saying, Vivian? You're not fired. You're not arrested. You're protected. Because whoever tried to use you just made the fatal mistake of threatening someone in my house. Vivian stared at him, confusion and relief and terror all warring on her face. Why would you protect me? You almost nothing, Grant interrupted. You made a choice under duress, and then you made a better choice when it mattered. That tells me more about your character than 8 months of perfect service ever could. He held her gaze. But it also tells me that you're in danger. Real danger. And I don't let threats against my people go unanswered. I'm not your people. I'm just your housekeeper. Grant's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. You stopped being just my housekeeper the moment someone used you as a weapon against me. Now you're evidence. A witness. And someone I'm going to keep alive long enough to identify who sent that cake. He turned toward the door, then paused. Marcus will take you to one of the guest suites in the East Wing. You'll have everything you need. Don't try to leave, don't try to call anyone, and don't touch any communication devices until I clear them. Understood? Yes, Mr. King. Grant looked back at her one more time. And Vivian? The next time someone threatens your family, you come to me first, before you agree to anything, before you panic, before you make choices that could get you killed. Clear? Clear. As Grant left the kitchen, his mind was already working through scenarios, calculating threats, identifying the most likely suspects. Someone had gotten close enough to his world to identify a vulnerability he hadn't even known existed. that someone was about to learn what happened when you threatened Grant King's people. And Vivian Rose, quiet, invisible, efficient Vivian Rose was about to discover that being under a mafia boss's protection was both the safest and most dangerous place she could possibly be. Marcus returned to the kitchen 30 minutes later with confirmation that made Grant's jaw tighten. The cake contained enough ricin to kill within hours, doses carefully measured into the chocolate ganache. Professional work, expensive. The kind of poison that required connections and planning. Grant escorted Vivian through the private elevator to the third floor, his floor, where 4 guest suites occupied the secure wing. He opened the door to the largest one, a space designed for visiting associates who required protection rather than hospitality. Bulletproof windows, reinforced door, security camera in the corner that fed directly to his personal monitors. "This is your room until further notice," Grant said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "Bathroom is stocked. Clothes in your size will be delivered within the hour. You don't leave this floor without Marcus or Chen accompanying you." Vivian stood in the doorway, her eyes moving over the elegant prison he'd just assigned her. "For how long?" "Until I find Judd Thorne." She turned sharply. "Who?" "The man who approached you." Grant pulled out his phone, showing her a photograph Marcus had pulled from surveillance archives. "Judd Thorne. Mid-level operator out of Connecticut. He's been trying to move into my territory for 6 months. This was his play, use you to eliminate me, then move into the power vacuum." Vivian stared at the photo, her face going pale. "That's him. That's the man from the pharmacy." "I know." Grant's voice was cold. "Marcus identified him from the surveillance footage 20 minutes ago. He's being tracked as we speak. And my sister? Already secured. She's being transferred to a private medical facility in White Plains. Better equipment, better staff, complete security. She'll be there by midnight." Vivian's legs seemed to give out again. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands covering her face. "I don't understand. Why are you helping us?" Grant studied her for a long moment. "Because Thorne made a mistake. He thought threatening you would be subtle, controlled, untraceable. He didn't account for the fact that you'd choose differently. And he definitely didn't account for the fact that I protect what's mine. I'm not yours, I'm just... You're an employee who was coerced under my roof." Grant's voice cut through her protest. "That makes it my problem. And my responsibility." He moved toward the door, then paused. "There's a panic button by the bed. Press it if you need anything. Marcus will be stationed outside your door all night." "Mr. King." "Grant," he interrupted. "If we're going to be living in close quarters until this is resolved, you can use my first name." Vivian looked up at him, confusion and exhaustion written across her face. "I tried to kill you." "No," Grant corrected quietly. "You tried to save your sister and failed to kill me. There's a difference." He opened the door. "Get some sleep, Vivian. Tomorrow we start hunting the man who thought he could use you as a weapon." After he left, Grant returned to his office and pulled up the security feeds. Marcus had already compiled a full dossier on Judd Thorne. Operations in Hartford, connections to pharmaceutical smuggling, 3 suspected murders, and a pattern of targeting mid-level employees in rival organizations. Smart, methodical, and now a dead man walking. Grant made 3 calls. First to his consigliere, Vincent, authorizing a full investigation into Thorne's movements. Second to his financial controller, redirecting funds to ensure Esther Rose's medical care was covered indefinitely. Third to his head of security, instructing a complete lockdown of the estate until Thorne was neutralized. Then he pulled up the camera feed from Vivian's room. She sat on the edge of the bed, still fully dressed, staring at nothing, not crying, not moving, just processing. Grant watched her for longer than he should have, noting the way her hands had finally stopped shaking, the way her spine gradually straightened as exhaustion gave way to something harder. Resolve, maybe. Or just the realization that her carefully controlled life had shattered completely. He understood that feeling. Had lived it himself once, years ago, when his own world had collapsed and rebuilt itself into something darker. Vivian Rose was about to learn what it meant to survive in his world. And Grant King was about to learn what it meant to protect someone who'd seen him at his most vulnerable. The moment when poison sat on his kitchen counter, and his perfectly controlled life had depended entirely on the choice of a woman he'd barely noticed for 8 months. Tomorrow, they'd start tracking Thorne. Tonight, Grant would watch the monitors and ensure that the woman who'd saved his life stayed alive long enough to understand what that meant. By morning, Marcus had delivered a file that made Grant's expression go cold. Esther Rose wasn't just vulnerable, she was systematically trapped. Medical bills totaling $847,000 over 3 years. insurance that covered barely 40%, a care facility that charged $12,000 monthly for specialized monitoring, and Vivian, working 3 jobs before Grant hired her, burning through her parents' modest life insurance just to keep her sister alive. Grant sat in his office, reading through financial records Marcus had pulled legally questionable but thorough, and realized that Judd Thorne hadn't just found a pressure point. He'd found someone already drowning, someone so desperate to keep her sister safe that poison had seemed like the only option. She was working as a housekeeper for me, a night cleaner at an office building, and doing weekend shifts at a catering company, Marcus said, standing across the desk. Averaging 90 hours a week. Medical debt collectors had started calling her twice daily. The care facility had issued a 30-day notice to move Esther if payment wasn't received in full. Grant's jaw tightened. When? The notice came 3 weeks ago, 5 days before Thorne approached her at the pharmacy. Perfect timing. Thorne had watched Vivian long enough to know exactly when she'd be most desperate, most willing to make impossible choices. Where's Thorne now? Last confirmed sighting was in Stamford yesterday afternoon. He's gone dark since then. No cell phone activity, no credit card use, no movement at any of his known properties. Marcus hesitated. He knows we're looking for him. Grant stood, moving to the windows. His estate sprawled below, guards visible at every checkpoint, cameras tracking every angle, impenetrable from outside. But Thorne had already breached his defenses by turning an insider into a weapon. Pull everyone who's had contact with Vivian in the last 6 months, Grant said. Staff, delivery drivers, vendors, anyone. I want to know if Thorne approached anyone else. Already started. So far, she's the only target. Isolated, financially desperate, emotionally vulnerable. Marcus glanced at his tablet. She was perfect. She was convenient, Grant corrected coldly. And Thorne assumed she was weak enough to follow through. He was wrong. What do you want to do about her? Grant turned from the window. What do you mean? She's a liability now. Thorne knows she failed. He knows she's under your protection. That makes her a permanent security risk. Marcus's voice was carefully neutral. Standard protocol would be relocation, new identity, distance from your operations. Grant was quiet for a long moment, considering the logical choice. Vivian Rose was a vulnerability, a crack in his armor. Every moment she remained in his world was a moment Thorne or someone else could exploit, but sending her away meant abandoning someone who'd been coerced, threatened, and terrorized because of her proximity to him. It meant punishing her for surviving. It meant proving that working for Grant King came with consequences that couldn't be escaped even after the threat was neutralized. No, Grant said finally. She stays. Marcus's eyebrow rose slightly. Sir? Thorne targeted her because she was invisible and vulnerable. Sending her away doesn't change that, it just puts her somewhere I can't protect her. Grant's voice was firm. She stays here, under full security, until Thorne is eliminated. After that, we reassess. And if Thorne uses her as bait, then he'll find out what happens when someone threatens my people twice. Grant moved toward the door. Where is Vivian now? Still in her room. She hasn't left since last night. Refused breakfast. Grant headed for the 3rd floor, Marcus following. He found Vivian exactly where the security feed had shown her, sitting by the window, staring out at the grounds. She'd changed into clothes someone had delivered, simple jeans and a sweater that made her look younger, less like a housekeeper, and more like the woman who'd been working herself to death for 3 years. She turned when Grant entered, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. Is my sister safe? Yes. She's at the facility in White Plains. Stable, comfortable, asking about you. Grant closed the door behind him. You can video call her this afternoon if you want. Vivian's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Grant sat in the chair across from her. I need you to tell me everything about Thorne. Every conversation, every detail, everything he said that seemed off or specific. I need to understand how he thinks. Why? Because he's not going to stop. Grant's voice was quiet but absolute. He invested time and resources into this plan. He's not going to walk away just because you failed to kill me. He's going to try again, and next time, he won't be subtle. Vivian's face went pale. What do you mean? I mean he'll come for you directly, or for Esther, or for anyone else he thinks will give him leverage. Grant leaned forward. Which is why I need to find him first. And you're the only person who's seen him up close, talked to him, understands his approach. I don't know anything useful. You know more than you think. Grant pulled out a tablet. Start from the beginning. The pharmacy. What time did he approach you? What exactly did he say? How did he move? How did he stand? What did his voice sound like? Every detail matters. Vivian took a shaky breath and began talking. For the next hour, Grant questioned her with the precision of an interrogation, pulling out details she didn't know she remembered. The way Thorne had positioned himself to block the pharmacy camera, the specific brand of cigars he'd smelled like, the slight hesitation before he'd said, "Your family is next," that suggested he was reading from a script someone else had written. And as Vivian talked, Grant saw something shift in her expression. The helpless terror was fading, replaced by something sharper. Anger, maybe, or just the realization that she'd survived something that should have destroyed her. By the time they finished, Grant had a profile. Thorne was methodical but not creative, followed patterns, relied on fear rather than violence. That made him predictable, and predictable meant vulnerable. "You did well," Grant said. Standing, "Get some rest. Tomorrow we go deeper." "Grant?" Vivian's voice stopped him at the door. "Why are you doing this? Really?" He looked back at her. "Because Thorne thought he could use my own house against me. And I don't let that go unanswered. That's not the whole reason." Grant was quiet for a moment, then said something that surprised even himself. "You chose to protect me even when it cost you everything. That kind of loyalty is rare. I don't waste it." He left before she could respond, but he felt her eyes on his back all the way to the elevator. 3 days into the lockdown, Vivian cornered Grant in his office. She didn't knock, just walked in with the kind of righteous fury that made Marcus, stationed outside, raise his eyebrows in surprise. "You need to get Esther out," Vivian said without preamble. "Now, before Thorne figures out where she is." Grant looked up from his laptop. "She's in the most secure medical facility in the state. Thorne isn't getting near her." "You don't know that." "I do know that." Grant's voice was calm, controlled. "I have 6 guards rotating shifts, cameras on every entrance, and a direct line to local law enforcement. Thorne would have to bring an army. Then he'll bring an army." Vivian's voice cracked. "You don't understand. He won't stop. He'll keep pushing until he finds a way in. And when he does, he'll be met with force." Grant stood, moving around the desk. "Vivian, I know you're scared, but relocating Esther makes her more vulnerable, not less. Right now, she's exactly where I can control the situation." "Control." Vivian's laugh was bitter. "This isn't about control, Grant. This is about my sister's life. And I won't let you turn her into bait just to catch Thorne. That's not what I'm doing." "Then what are you doing?" Vivian stepped closer, her hazel eyes blazing. "Because from where I'm standing, you're using her safety as leverage to keep me compliant. You're keeping me locked in this house, feeding me updates about threats I can't fight, making me dependent on your protection." "You are dependent on my protection," Grant interrupted, his voice going cold. "Because Thorne is actively hunting you. He has your photo, your schedule, your vulnerabilities. Without me, you're dead in 48 hours. So I should just trust you? Trust that you'll keep your promises? Trust that you're not going to use Esther the same way Thorne did?" The accusation hit harder than Grant expected. He stared at Vivian, seeing the raw terror beneath her anger, the desperate need to believe someone would protect her sister without requiring something in return. "I'm not Thorne," Grant said quietly. "Prove it." Vivian's voice was shaking. "Prove it by getting Esther somewhere safe that has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with your world, nothing to do with this nightmare I'm trapped in." Grant was silent for a long moment, studying her. "You want me to send her away?" "Yes. To a facility where I can't monitor her security, can't control who has access, can't guarantee Thorne won't find her." "Yes." "No." Grant's voice was flat, absolute. "Esther stays where she is, under my protection. And so do you." Vivian's hands curled into fists. "You can't keep me here." "I can, and I will. Because the alternative is you walking out that door and dying within the week." Grant stepped closer, his voice dropping to that lethal quiet. "You think I'm controlling you? I'm saving you. You think I'm using Esther as leverage? I'm keeping her alive. And you think I'm doing this for my benefit? I'm doing this because you made a choice that saved my life, and I don't leave debts unpaid. I don't want to owe you." "Too late." Grant's eyes were cold, certain. "You're in my world now, Vivian. You're under my protection. And that comes with conditions. You want me to rescue Esther without violence? Fine. I'll do it clean. But you don't get to demand that and then refuse to help me hunt the man who threatened her. You don't get to take my protection and then withhold the information I need to make that protection effective." Vivian stared at him, fury and fear warring on her face. "What do you want from me?" "Everything. Grant said simply. Every conversation with Thorne, every detail about your life that he could exploit, every fear, every weakness, every pressure point. I need complete honesty, complete transparency, complete trust, because that's the only way I can keep you alive. And if I can't give you that, then you're a liability. Grant's voice didn't soften. And liabilities don't survive in my world. The silence stretched between them, heavy and dangerous. Then Vivian said, her voice barely above a whisper, "You want trust? Then stop treating me like a prisoner. Stop making decisions about my sister without consulting me. Stop acting like I'm something you own just because you're protecting me." Grant studied her for a long moment. "What do you want?" "Partnership." Vivian lifted her chin. "You want my information, my trust, my cooperation? Then treat me like a partner, not a victim. Tell me your plans. Let me be part of the decisions. Stop locking me in rooms and expecting me to be grateful." Grant was quiet, considering. Everything in his training, his experience, his instincts, said that sharing operational details with a civilian was dangerous. But Vivian Rose wasn't just a civilian anymore. She was a witness, a target, and whether he'd intended it or not, someone whose survival was now tied directly to his reputation. "All right," Grant said finally. "Partnership, but that means you follow my security protocols without question. It means you trust my judgment when it comes to Esther's safety. And it means when I tell you something is too dangerous, you listen. Deal." Vivian held out her hand. Grant took it, feeling the tremor she was trying to hide, the strength beneath the fear. "Then let's start with something you can control. Tell me what Esther needs, not just medical care, but comfort. What makes her feel safe?" Vivian blinked, surprised by the question. She likes music. Classical, mostly. And she has a stuffed rabbit from when we were kids. It's in her room at the old facility. Consider it retrieved." Grant released her hand. "What else?" "She gets anxious when she's alone. The nurses at the old place used to sit with her, just talk about normal things. I'll assign someone specifically for that. Someone trained in medical care who can also provide company." Vivian's eyes were wet. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you asked." Grant's voice softened slightly. "And because Esther's comfort is part of keeping you functional. You can't help me hunt Thorne if you're terrified about your sister's well-being. That's practical. I'm a practical man." Grant moved back to his desk. "Now, tell me about Thorne's phone call pattern. You said he contacted you twice before the delivery. What time, and what exactly did he say?" Vivian took a shaky breath and began talking. And for the first time since she'd hidden that poisoned cake, Grant saw something shift in her expression, not gratitude, not submission, but something closer to determination. They worked through the night, building a timeline of Thorne's movements, identifying his patterns, finding the gaps in his surveillance. And somewhere around 2 a.m., when Vivian laughed at something Grant said about Thorne's amateur tradecraft, Grant realized something unsettling. He didn't just want to keep Vivian Rose alive for practical reasons. He wanted to keep her alive because somewhere in the last 3 days, she'd stopped being a liability and become someone he actually respected. That realization was more dangerous than any poisoned cake. By the end of the first week, Vivian had memorized Grant's schedule. 6 a.m. security briefing, 7 a.m. breakfast alone, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. in his office conducting business that she wasn't privy to, 3 p.m. meeting with Marcus, 6 p.m. dinner, and then back to his office until midnight. Controlled, methodical, absolutely predictable. She'd also learned that he took his coffee black, hated small talk, and had a tell when he was worried his left hand would tap twice against his thigh before he made a decision. She noticed it now, as they sat in his office reviewing surveillance footage from Stamford. Grant's hand tapped twice, and then he said, "Thorne's using a proxy. Someone local who knows the area." "How do you know?" "Because he's avoiding cameras he shouldn't know exist." Grant pointed to the screen. "This angle is new. Installed 3 weeks ago after a break-in at the neighboring business. Thorne's route suggests he knows to avoid it." Vivian leaned closer, studying the footage. Her shoulder brushed Grant's, and he went very still. She pulled back immediately, the proximity suddenly uncomfortable. This had been happening more frequently. The accidental touches, the moments when their eyes met and held too long. The awareness that they were living in forced intimacy that had nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with survival. Except it was starting to feel like it had something to do with attraction. "Sorry," Vivian muttered. "It's fine." But Grant's voice was tighter than usual. She studied him, really studied him for the first time without the terror that had colored every previous interaction. Grant King at rest was different from Grant King in command. His shoulders were less rigid. his expression less controlled. There were lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled occasionally, though she'd never seen it. And his hands, which were always so deliberate, had a slight tremor now that he thought she wasn't watching. "You're nervous," Vivian said, surprised. Grant's eyes snapped to hers. "Excuse me? Your hands. They're shaking slightly. You're nervous about something." "I'm not nervous. I'm calculating contingencies. That's what nervous people say." Vivian crossed her arms. "What are you worried about?" Grant was quiet for a long moment, then said something that surprised them both. "That I'm going to fail to protect you." The admission hung in the air, raw and unexpected. Vivian stared at him, seeing past the controlled facade to something more vulnerable underneath. "You've kept me safe for a week," she said quietly. "A week isn't enough. Thorn is still out there. And every day you're in this house is another day he's planning his next move. So what do? We wait, we watch, and when he makes a mistake, we move." Grant's voice was firm, but the tremor in his hands betrayed him. Vivian did something she hadn't planned, something born of impulse and proximity, and too many days of seeing this man work himself to exhaustion trying to keep her alive. She reached out and covered his hand with hers. Grant froze, his eyes locking on their joined hands. "You're not going to fail," Vivian said, "because I'm not going to let you. We're partners, remember?" "Vivian, I mean it." She squeezed his hand. "You're not alone in this. Stop acting like the weight of keeping me alive rests entirely on your shoulders." Grant's thumb moved almost unconsciously, brushing across her knuckles. The touch was gentle, deliberate, and sent a shock of awareness through both of them. "This is a bad idea," Grant said quietly. "What is?" "This." He gestured between them. "Whatever this is becoming." Vivian pulled her hand back, her face flushing. I know what you were doing, and I know what I'm feeling, and both of those things are dangerous." Grant stood, putting distance between them. "You're under my protection. You're vulnerable. This isn't the time." "For what?" Vivian stood too, her voice sharper than intended. "For honesty. For acknowledging that we've been living in close quarters for a week and maybe, just maybe, we're starting to see each other as actual people instead of just roles. I've always seen you as a person. No, you saw me as your housekeeper. Invisible, efficient, forgettable." Vivian's voice cracked slightly. "And now you see me as a victim who needs protecting. But I'm not just either of those things, Grant. I'm a woman who made impossible choices, who survived things I shouldn't have, and who's capable of more than you're giving me credit for." Grant stared at her, something shifting in his expression. "I know exactly who you are, Vivian Rose. I know you worked yourself to exhaustion for 3 years to keep your sister alive. I know you faced down a man who threatened your family and still chose to protect me. I know you're strong enough to handle the truth even when it terrifies you." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "And I know that every moment I spend with you makes it harder to maintain the distance I need to keep you safe. Maybe I don't want distance. You should." But Grant didn't move away. They stood there, inches apart, the air between them charged with something neither wanted to name. Vivian could see the conflict in his eyes, the war between protection and attraction, between what was logical and what was being felt. "Grant," she whispered. His hand came up, almost against his will, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch was gentle, reverent, completely at odds with the controlled man she'd been living with for a week. "This complicates everything," he said quietly. "I know. Thorn is still out there. You're still in danger. And if I lose focus for even a moment, you won't." Vivian's hand covered his where it still rested against her cheek. "Because we're partners, and partners keep each other focused." Grant's eyes searched hers, looking for doubt, for fear, for any sign that this was a mistake. But all he saw was determination, and trust, and something that looked dangerously like longing. "1 week," he said finally. "When Thorn is dealt with, when Esther is permanently safe, when you're no longer under immediate threat, we revisit this. But not before. I won't risk you because I can't control what I'm feeling." It wasn't what Vivian wanted to hear, but it was honest and practical, and proof that Grant King valued her safety more than his own desires. 1 week, she agreed. Grant's hand dropped, and the distance between them returned. But something had shifted. Some invisible line had been crossed, and both of them knew that 1 week might as well be an eternity when every moment felt like it could be their last. Marcus knocked on the office door, breaking the tension. "Sir, we have movement." Thorn just activated a burner phone. Location traced to New Rochelle. Grant's entire demeanor shifted, the vulnerability vanishing behind cold calculation. Get the team ready. We move in 20 minutes. What about Vivian? Grant looked at her. You stay here. With full security. No arguments. I want to help. You are helping. By staying alive. Grant's voice was firm. This is the dangerous part, Vivian. Let me handle it. She wanted to argue. Wanted to insist on being part of the action. But she saw the determination in his eyes, and recognized it for what it was. A man doing what he did best to protect what mattered. Be careful, she said instead. Grant paused at the door, looking back at her. Always am. Then he was gone, and Vivian was left alone with the surveillance monitors, watching the man who'd become far more than her protector disappear into the night to hunt the monster who'd tried to turn her into a murderer. And she realized, with startling clarity, that she was terrified not for herself but for him. The operation took 6 hours. Vivian watched from the monitors in Grant's office, Marcus standing guard beside her, providing minimal commentary as events unfolded. Grant's team moved with surgical precision. They'd traced Thorne's burner signal to an industrial warehouse in New Rochelle, surrounded it, and waited. When Thorne arrived at 3 a.m., presumably to check on whatever operation he was running from there, Grant's people were ready. No shots fired, no violence, just controlled apprehension. Thorne stepping out of his vehicle, finding himself surrounded by 8 armed men, and wisely choosing surrender over suicide. But it was what happened next that made Vivian's breath catch. Grant didn't bring Thorne back to the estate. Instead, he made a single phone call, and 30 minutes later, a second team moved on a residential address in Stamford, the house where Judd Thorne had been keeping his leverage. Not Esther, thankfully. Esther had been safe in White Plains all along, but 3 other people. A young man, a teenager, and an older woman, all people Thorne had coerced into carrying out various tasks for him. All people who'd been living under threat, just like Vivian. Grant had them transported to safe locations, provided immediate medical care and legal support, and ensured they understood they were witnesses, not accomplices. He's keeping his promise, Marcus said quietly, watching Vivian's face as she processed what Grant was doing. Clean rescue, no violence, just like he told you. Why? Vivian's voice was hoarse. Why go through all this trouble for people he doesn't know? Because you asked him to. Marcus's tone held something close to respect. And because Grant King doesn't do things halfway. When he commits to protection, he means everyone. By 7 a.m., Esther Rose was being transported to the estate under heavy guard. Grant had arranged for a full medical suite to be set up in the East Wing equipment. Specialists, everything Esther needed to continue her care under one roof. Vivian met her sister in the main foyer, Marcus discreetly withdrawing to give them privacy. Esther looked small and confused, her wheelchair dwarfed by the grandeur of Grant's home, but her eyes lit up when she saw Vivian. Viv? Esther's voice was weak, uncertain. What's going on? The nurses said. You're safe. Vivian dropped to her knees, taking her sister's hands. You're safe, and you're staying here until everything is settled. Here? Esther looked around, taking in the marble floors, the crystal chandelier, the obvious wealth surrounding them. Where is here? Somewhere protected. Vivian squeezed her hands. I'll explain everything, I promise. But right now, I just need you to know that you're safe. No more threats. No more danger. Esther's eyes filled with tears. I was so scared. Those men, they came to the facility and said I had to go with them, and I thought, I know, but they're gone now, and the person who sent them is in custody. Because of you? Vivian hesitated, then said honestly, because of someone who's helping us. Someone who has the resources to keep us both safe. Grant's voice came from the staircase. Someone who'd like to meet Esther, if that's acceptable. Both women turned. Grant descended the stairs with controlled grace, his expression neutral, but his eyes sharp, assessing Esther's condition, her level of fear, how much Vivian had told her. Esther rose, Grant said, stopping a respectful distance away. I'm Grant King. Vivian works for me, and I owe her a considerable debt for saving my life last week. Esther's eyes widened. You. What? Long story, Vivian said quickly. Grant has agreed to help us while some security issues are resolved. Esther, he's the one who arranged your transfer here, who's made sure you have everything you need. Why? Esther looked between them, confused. We're nobody. Why would you? Because your sister is someone who matters to me, Grant said simply. And people who matter to me are protected. No exceptions. The way he said it, the absolute certainty, the lack of hesitation, made something shift in Vivian's chest. Thank you, Esther said quietly, for helping us. Grant nodded once. The medical suite is ready whenever you are. Dr. Chen will be overseeing your care personally. Anything you need, ask Vivian or Marcus. This is your home for as long as necessary. After Esther was settled in the medical suite, Vivian found Grant in his office, staring at surveillance footage. He looked exhausted, his shirt rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. You haven't slept, Vivian said. Neither have you. I wasn't out capturing criminals at 3 a.m. She moved to stand beside him. Thank you, for Esther, for keeping your promise. I keep my promises. Grant's voice was tired but firm. Always have. What happens to Thorne now? He's being transferred to federal custody. The evidence we provided links him to multiple cases of coercion, extortion, and attempted murder. He'll be in prison for the rest of his life. Just like that? Just like that. Grant finally looked at her. You're safe now, Vivian. Both of you. Thorne can't touch you anymore. Vivian should have felt relief, should have felt joy. But all she felt was a strange sense of dread because safe meant the emergency was over, and the emergency being over meant the forced proximity would end. Grant would return to his controlled life, and she'd return to... what, exactly? Being his housekeeper? Living in his house with her sister? Pretending the last week hadn't changed everything? What happens now? She asked quietly. Grant was silent for a long moment. Now you and Esther heal. You settle into normal life. And when you're ready, we figure out what your role in this household actually is. And us? Grant's eyes met hers. 1 week, remember? Emergency's over. Now we wait and see if what we felt was real, or just adrenaline and proximity. And if it's real, then we deal with it honestly. Grant's hand came up, brushing her cheek with the same gentleness he'd shown before. But not tonight. Tonight, you should be with your sister. She needs you more than I do. It was practical, logical, the right thing to do. But Vivian found herself hesitating, not wanting to leave, not wanting to lose this moment. Grant, go, Vivian. His voice was soft but firm. We have time now. That's what we fought for. She nodded, turned to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I think it's real. Grant's expression softened in a way she'd never seen before. So do I. The threat came not from Thorne, who remained in federal custody, but from something Grant should have anticipated. Exposure. 3 days after Esther's arrival, a local reporter started asking questions about Grant King's recent charitable work securing medical care for unnamed individuals. Questions that suggested someone had leaked details about the rescue operation. Questions that, if published, would put Vivian and Esther directly in the spotlight of Grant's criminal world. Grant identified the leak within hours. One of Thorne's associates, a low-level operator named Derek Cross, who'd escaped the New Rochelle raid and was now trying to leverage Vivian's story for protection from Grant's retaliation. Cross's play was simple but effective. Expose Vivian's coercion publicly, paint her as an attempted assassin who'd gotten away with it through Grant's protection, and force either a federal investigation or a public scandal that would destabilize Grant's operations. Grant called an emergency meeting with his inner circle, Marcus, Vincent, Chen, and Vivian, who insisted on being present despite Grant's protests. Cross has documentation, Vincent reported. Photos of Vivian receiving the cake package, copies of Thorne's communications, enough to build a narrative that you covered up an assassination attempt to protect a compromised employee, which is partially true, Vivian said quietly. Everyone looked at her. I did receive a poisoned cake. I did hide it instead of serving it. Grant did protect me instead of reporting me. Cross doesn't need to lie. The truth is damaging enough. Not if we control the narrative, Grant said. Cross wants attention? We give it to him, but on our terms. What do you mean? Marcus asked. Grant pulled up a file on his tablet. Cross has 3 outstanding warrants in Connecticut, 2 for fraud, 1 for assault. He's been evading capture for 6 months. If someone were to provide federal investigators with his current location and proof of his connection to Thorne's coercion operation, he becomes a criminal trying to deflect from his own crimes, Vincent finished. Smart, but it doesn't eliminate the story. No, but it changes the focus, Grant looked at Vivian. We need to make a statement. Something that confirms the basic facts but reframes the narrative. You were coerced. I protected you. The actual criminal Thorne is in custody. And anyone attempting to exploit this situation for personal gain will face legal consequences. That puts Vivian at risk, Marcus protested. You're confirming she was involved. I'm confirming she was a victim, Grant corrected, and that I take care of my people. which is a message I'm perfectly comfortable sending. Grant, no. Vivian stood. You can't expose yourself like this. Your reputation, your operations, are less important than ensuring you're not painted as a criminal. Grant's voice was flat, absolute. Cross wants to use you to hurt me. I'm not allowing that. Then let me make the statement, Vivian said. Let me tell the story myself. I'm the victim. I'm the witness. Let me control my own narrative. Grant studied her, seeing the determination in her eyes, the refusal to be passive in her own defense. If you do that, there's no going back. You'll be publicly connected to me, to this world, to everything that comes with it. I'm already connected, Vivian said simply. Hiding doesn't change that, but telling the truth might. The statement went live 2 days later. A carefully worded press release confirming that Vivian Rose had been coerced by Judd Thorne, that she'd refused to comply and instead alerted Grant King, that Thorne was now in federal custody, and that any attempt to exploit this situation would be met with legal action. The response was immediate. 3 news outlets picked up the story, reframing it as a tale of a woman who'd protected her employer despite threats. Derek Cross, attempting to capitalize on the attention, found himself arrested within 24 hours when federal marshals raided his hotel room in New Haven. Grant watched the media cycle from his office, Vivian standing beside him. It's working, she said quietly. Cross is the villain now, not me. As it should be. Grant pulled up another screen. But this isn't over. Cross had connections. Someone provided him with those photos, those documents. Someone inside my operation leaked information. Do you know who? I have suspicions. Grant's voice was cold. And they're being investigated as we speak. Vivian was quiet for a moment, then asked, What happens when you find them? They're removed from my organization, permanently. Grant looked at her. No violence, just expulsion. I don't punish people for being scared into betrayal, but I don't tolerate continued security risks. That's more merciful than I expected. I'm not a monster, Vivian. I'm a businessman who operates in morally gray spaces. There's a difference. Grant closed the laptop. You're safe now. Publicly, legally, completely. Thorne is imprisoned. Cross is in custody. The leak is being handled. You can breathe. But Vivian didn't feel like breathing. She felt like the ground had just shifted beneath her. The emergency that had defined her life for weeks finally ending, leaving her standing in the wreckage of everything she'd been before. What am I supposed to do now? She asked quietly. Grant's hand found hers. Whatever you want. You're not my employee anymore. You're not my responsibility. You're free to leave, to start over, to build whatever life you want. And if I don't want to leave? Grant's fingers tightened on hers. Then we talk about what staying looks like. For real. No emergencies, no forced proximity, no life or death stakes. Just 2 people deciding if what they feel is worth building something permanent. Is it? Vivian turned to face him. Worth it, I mean? Grant studied her face, the woman who'd saved his life, who'd trusted him with her secrets, who'd faced down public exposure rather than let him be damaged by protecting her. Yes, he said simply. You're worth it. Esther recovered quickly in the medical suite, her condition stabilizing under Dr. Chen's expert care. Within 2 weeks, she was mobile enough to explore the estate, asking questions about Grant, about Vivian's new role, about what exactly they were doing living in a mansion with armed guards and surveillance cameras. Vivian told her everything. The poisoned cake, the coercion, Grant's protection, the rescue, the media exposure, all of it. Esther listened with wide eyes, then said, So you're in love with a mafia boss? Vivian choked on her tea. We're not. Viv, I'm 19, not stupid. The way he looks at you, the way you talk about him, you're absolutely in love with him. Esther smiled. And honestly, after everything he's done for us, I'm okay with it. It's not that simple. Why not? Because his world is dangerous. Because I don't know if what I feel is real or just gratitude. Because I don't know if I can live in a house with armed guards and security protocols and constant awareness that violence is always an option. But you're already living in it, Esther pointed out. And you haven't run yet. Vivian was quiet, absorbing that truth. She hadn't run. Hadn't even wanted to. Because somewhere in the last month, Grant King's dangerous world had started to feel like home. She found Grant in his office that evening, reviewing security reports. He looked up when she entered, something softening in his expression. Esther's settled, Vivian said. Dr. Chen says she's responding well to the new medication protocol. Good. Grant set down his tablet. I'm glad she's comfortable here. She asked me if I was in love with you. Grant went very still. What did you tell her? That it's complicated. Vivian moved to stand in front of his desk. But she pointed out that I'm already living in your world, already part of this life. And that maybe the only thing complicated about it is me trying to convince myself I shouldn't want this. Vivian, I want to stay, she said firmly. Not as your housekeeper, not as someone you're protecting out of obligation, but as whatever we're becoming. Grant stood slowly. You understand what that means. My world doesn't get safer. My enemies don't disappear. Choosing me means choosing constant vigilance, constant awareness that you're a potential target. I know. It means living with guards, surveillance, restrictions on your freedom. I know. It means that people will judge you for being with someone like me. Will assume things about your character, your morals, your choices. I know. Vivian's voice was steady. And I'm choosing it anyway, because the alternative, walking away, starting over, pretending the last month didn't happen, that feels more dangerous than staying. Grant moved around the desk, stopping inches from her. I can't promise you safety. I can only promise protection. There's a difference. I don't want safety. I want honesty, partnership, the chance to build something real with someone who sees me as an equal, not a victim. You've never been a victim, Grant said quietly. You've been the strongest person in this house from the moment you chose not to poison me. Then let me keep being strong, here, with you. Grant's hand came up, cupping her face. If you stay, it's permanent. I don't do temporary, Vivian. I don't do casual. If we're building this, we're building it to last. Good. She covered his hand with hers. Because I don't want temporary either. Grant kissed her then, slow and deliberate. A promise sealed without words. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, the weight of the decision settling between them. There are terms, Grant said. If you're staying, if we're doing this, I'd expect nothing less. You continue making decisions about Esther's care. I'll provide resources, but she's your sister. Your family. Your choices. Agreed. You tell me when something feels wrong. When a security protocol makes you uncomfortable. When a decision I make affects you. I need complete honesty. Always. And you accept that some parts of my business will remain private. Not because I don't trust you, but because knowledge can be dangerous. I won't burden you with information that could make you a target. Vivian hesitated, then nodded. As long as you promise that if that information directly affects me or Esther, you tell me immediately. Deal. Grant pulled her closer. One more thing. You're not my employee anymore. You're my partner. Equal say in how this household runs. Equal voice in decisions that affect our life together. Clear? Very clear. They stood there, holding each other, both aware that they'd just committed to something that would redefine everything. No emergency forcing them together. No external threat creating artificial intimacy. Just two people choosing each other despite or perhaps because of everything they'd survived. I love you, Vivian said quietly. I probably shouldn't. And I definitely didn't plan to, but I do. Grant's arms tightened around her. I love you too. From the moment you chose my life over your sister's safety, I've been in love with you. Even when I shouldn't have been. Especially when you shouldn't have been, Vivian corrected with a small smile. Especially then. 6 months later, Vivian stood in Grant's office, their office now reviewing security protocols for an upcoming charity gala. Esther's Medical Foundation, funded by Grant but managed by Vivian, was hosting an event to raise awareness for families struggling with medical debt. Grant entered carrying 2 cups of coffee, setting one beside her with the ease of routine. Chen confirmed the perimeter setup. We'll have 12 visible guards and 6 undercover among the guests. That seems excessive for a charity event. That seems appropriate for an event attended by my partner. Grant's hand rested on her lower back, casual and possessive. How's Esther? Excited. Nervous. Wearing the dress I helped her pick out 3 times to make sure it still fits. Vivian smiled. She's doing really well, Grant. The new treatment protocol is working. Good. She deserves to be healthy. Grant pulled up a calendar on the tablet. Vincent wants to schedule a meeting next week about the expansion into Philadelphia. You should be there. Me? Why? Because you understand the legal implications better than most of my associates. And because I value your opinion on whether the risk is worth the reward. 6 months ago, Vivian would have been shocked by that statement. Now, it was simply fact. She'd become involved in Grant's operations gradually, first as a sounding board, then as an advisor on legitimate business matters, finally as someone whose strategic thinking Grant actively sought out. She wasn't part of the criminal aspects. Grant had kept that promise. shielding her from decisions that crossed legal lines. But she was absolutely part of the business empire that supported his operations, the legitimate ventures that laundered money and created cover. It was a compromise that worked for both of them. "I'll be there," Vivian said, "but only if you promise to actually listen when I tell you the Philadelphia expansion is too aggressive." "I always listen." "You listen, then do whatever you planned anyway." "That's not true." Grant turned her to face him. "I listened when you said we needed better medical resources on staff. I listened when you said the security protocols for Esther were excessive. I listened when you told me Derek Cross didn't deserve violence, just justice. And you listened when I said I was staying. That was the most important thing you ever said." Grant kissed her forehead. "Everything else was just building the life we wanted." Vivian wrapped her arms around him, breathing in the scent of his cologne and coffee and safety. "Do you ever regret it? Letting me stay?" "Never." Grant's voice was firm. "You made me better, Vivian. More human. More aware that protection isn't just about eliminating threats, but about building something worth protecting." Very philosophical for a mafia boss. Very practical for a man in love. Grant pulled back to look at her. "Have I told you today that I love you?" "Only twice. You're slacking." "Then let me remedy that." Grant kissed her properly this time, deep and claiming and full of the promise they'd built together. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "I love you. I love the life we've built. I love that Esther is healthy and happy. I love that you argue with me about business decisions. I love everything about this partnership. Even when I use your own security protocols against you, especially then." They returned to work, side by side, partners in every sense that mattered. The poisoned cake that had brought them together was a distant memory now, replaced by daily routines and shared decisions and the comfortable intimacy of two people who'd survived the worst and chosen to build something permanent from the wreckage. Esther appeared in the doorway, wheeling herself in with practiced ease. "Am I interrupting?" "Never," Vivian said. "What's up?" "Dr. Chen said I'm cleared to travel. I was thinking, maybe we could visit Hartford, see the old apartment, visit Mom and Dad's graves." Vivian glanced at Grant, who nodded immediately. "We'll arrange security, make a weekend of it. You, Vivian, and whatever guards Marcus assigns." "Thank you," Esther smiled. "For everything, for saving Vivian, for saving me, for giving us a home when we had nowhere else to go." "This is your home," Grant said simply. "For as long as you want it to be." After Esther left, Vivian returned to Grant's side. "You're good at this, the family thing." "I'm learning." Grant's arm wrapped around her waist. "From the best teacher." "I didn't teach you anything. You taught me what's worth protecting, what's worth sacrificing for, what's worth building a life around." Grant's voice was quiet, honest. "Before you, I had an empire. Now I have a family. That's worth more than any territory I could control." Vivian leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the strength in his arms, the absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. 6 months ago, she'd hidden a poisoned cake and shattered her carefully controlled life. Now, she was standing in the office of a man who'd turned protection into love, who'd given her and her sister not just safety, but a home. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me, for choosing me, for building this with me." Grant kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for saving my life, and then staying to make it worth living." They stood together as the sun set beyond the bulletproof windows. Two people who'd found each other in the darkest circumstances and built something fierce and permanent and absolutely theirs. The poisoned cake was long gone, but the life they'd chosen, complicated, dangerous, real, remained. And that was more than enough. If this story touched your heart, please share in the comments where you're watching from around the world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder that help sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. Your support keeps these stories